well, as in true cinematic style, I've lost all the footage from making the nut because I've just deleted the wrong file. Anyway, that's the locking nut for the end, which is a M20. Threads in position. I've made a collar up which sits over the top of the shaft to give me that bigger bearing surface there. So yeah, next job now is to, on the shaft I've got to cut the squares now. That's reduced to the right diameter for the drive. So I've got to cut the nut for the trapezoidal thread and decide on how I'm going to do that. There we go. We've, or I have, trued the ends up, bored it out. I'm actually 3 thou over on ID. I was 1 thou under, took another cut, cleaned, went in, brought it out, and ended up 3 thou over. It's 20.56 and it was supposed to be 20.5. I'm not too fussed. Set the profile tool for the thread to height, centre height, using a ruler, which is a bit pikey, but it's the only way I can really get it and do it happily. And then that's my grinding jig for the tip, so to make sure that's in line, I don't know whether you can see that, the tip fills the hole and it's parallel with that face, so therefore it's going to be parallel with the board, with the bore, sorry. So in theory, other than setting up the gearbox, we should be ready to cut. Now I've got to cut it, I've got to go into the back and then cut it coming out to get a left hand thread with the chuck running in the normal orientation. My chuck is a screw on fitting, so I can't run the chuck in reverse without playing catch. I've checked the hole up the spout of the chuck and that's 30mm diameter. I'm only coming out to 26, so there's a bit of clearance at the back end. So I'm going to set my depth stop on my my carriage stop on the bed to basically allow me to take the tool in, bump against, there's the back of the chuck, and I've got a 5mm gap still to the carriage stop. So if I wind us in, I've just got to make sure that I don't wind too far, because then I'll foul the far side, like that. Might find that this bloody tool's too big. Yeah, I'll show you. So the tool has had the corners ground off up to that point. You can just see the dint on the back where it's catching on that point, and it's got to go into nearly touching that. So I'll probably just take the tool out again and grind that back edge off. Bugger. The main issue I've got with that tool is from that point back there's a hell of a lot of wasted space. So I could actually have a larger diameter tool if I had a shorter bit in there. And my plan B, if I can't get this right, is to make up a little boring bar and holder, which will be similar to that which I made up on an earlier video when I was boring the inside of the ball gear. I found that to be really bloody solid, so I'll make another one up. The only issue is that's made for the compound to be set at 10 degrees for fine adjust. For cutting the threads it's got to be set at 14.5 degrees, so those hole orientations are a bit out, and then obviously it's not adjustable, so it would be then dedicated, albeit to to that setup. Right, tool out, get the grinder on it. Right, so I ended up taking a hand file too, it was quicker, neater. So that now goes in all the way up to my stop on the carriage. There, that's locked off. Little bit of clearance between the tool post and the end. And I think we're cooking on gas. I'm not happy with how thick it is. I think it's going to be Chatter City, but they are only light cuts, but they're light cuts because it's got a big cutting surface, which is the right hand end of that bit, and it goes in 2.5 mil. It's quite a big cutting edge, and you get a lot of swarf off the bottom of the cut. Move my hand out of the way of the speaker. A lot of swarf off the bottom of the cut, and then this bottom edge here. So it's those two surfaces you're cutting off. Well, suck it and see. Time for a cup of tea. Not after much cocking about with the previous cutting tool, which was this one. It's just too big. I need too big a hole in through the work. The section of the cutting of the bar is also quite a bit smaller than the hole, so I'm not getting any advantage from it. So I've made up a new bar. That's 5/8 or 16 mil. The hole's 20 mil. The thread depth is 2.5 mil. So I've got around about 0.5 mil clearance, or 20 thou, whereas using the other one I'd got about 10 thou, and it was just making it awkward. So we had a strip down, started all again. I've reset up my compound slide to 15 degrees, or 14.5 degrees. I don't know whether you can see that. As near as I can. Just a shade under half of 30 degrees. Set the tool post up to give me centre height on the cutting tool. Ground a new bit of high speed steel, which is 3/16 square. Sat in a 3/16 hole with the corners filed out. And we're about ready to go. I've just snatched an hour in the workshop, so I've made up that boring bar on the bit, set it up, so I can do that when I next get some time. It's a beautiful day out. Look at that, sunny stuff. Bring you back when we're cutting. Yeah, it helps if you turn the camera on when you start. Go! Right, I'll bring you back when we're finished drilling the hole. Right, well, we've bored it out to the target dimension, which from memory was 21.75 mil. I've set up a register to show the depth of the cut, so as soon as the cutting tool clips that, I know I'm full depth. I've done a spring pass, which you can just see the witness mark of it. So we're ready to go. It's slow. Now, because of the diameter of the hole I'm going into, I'm taking the cut, putting the cut on with the compound as you would do normally, but I'm also backing the compound out so the cross slide is staying still. Now I'm doing light cuts until I get a bit more confident. What I found with the aluminium when I was cutting that, the biggest problem was getting the swarf jammed up in there. So every half mil I was stopping, retracting the tool all the way out, and then going in with a brush and the vacuum. Because it's a left hand thread, it is dragging most of the swarf with it. So it's coming out the hole at the end. I'm taking a 1/10 of a mil each pass. Take a spring pass. I'm cutting it dry because I'm not aware of anything. I mean, other than I guess I could try anchor lube, but it's cutting all right. And what I don't want is the chips forming a lump. Nail biting, it's like the fingernails down the blackboard. Yeah, so to our imperial friends over the pond, it's about a 1/4 thou depth of cut on, depth of cut as opposed to taking off on diameter. Right, let's see how that looks. It's very close. Bring you out back when we've give it a bit more. Unfortunately, when I was getting around to the last couple of passes, phone had gone dead. The battery in the phone had gone dead. So that's our nut, or part of the threaded part of it. It's a very snug fit. It goes on, but it's, I can't, there's no movement. Well, there's a little tiny bit of rock that way. There's no end play, so I'm happy with that. So the next job is to work out how I'm going to fix the bronze nut into the cast iron jaw. I'll go and fetch that in a second. We'll have a look at it. So that's the moving jaw side on. That's top. Jaw plate clamps there. These slide on the ways of the chuck body, and these are keeper plates. So that's where that nut has got to fit. The more intelligent or observant of you will ascertain that I've made the nut longer than it needs to be. My reason being, I can turn this down and then leave myself a decent thickness flange, say 3/8 of an inch thick, and then, for example, bore that out, slide it in, Loctite it up, a couple of bolts, job's a good one. It's all a bit on the thin side, as we've discussed. So I need to come up with a cunning plan as to how I'm going to do it. I don't fancy trying to, I don't think there's enough meat anyway left on that to bore it out, turn that down to the minimum and get away with, and then slot it in and glue it on. I just think it's going to be too thin down here and it'll break out, or won't take much to break out. What I had in mind was to machine this block off, give myself a flat machine base, and then make a new piece that's steel that I can put some fixings in the back here, probably 2 or 4, probably 2 bolts and 2 spring roll pins, come through, and that'll hold it up that way, stop it twisting and yawning. The advantage of that is, once I've got that plate in and roughly shaped without the hole in it, I can sit the jaw in position. Just wondering whether I should hoik the vise over here so you can see. Just bear with me a second. So when that moving jaw's in position, you can see the front face of the boss there just about. Bring you down so you can have a closer look. So that's there. Now we've got a fixed jaw plate that fits 1/2 inch or so thick forward of that. When it's up to its limit, it's bottoming out in these corners here, and that gap is filled up with the jaws, and I've still got, I don't know, 1/4 inch gap there on the reverse end of it. It can't quite see in there, I don't think. There's a good gap. Now I've been having a brain fart, as some of the guys call it on the YouTube, trying to work out which side the flange wants to go on that. There's room to fit it this way, 1/4 inch deep, and there's room to fit it that side. Or I could have one each end for that matter. Obviously if I have one each end, I've got to come up with a different way of, I can't just have a whole board in and press it in, but I could make a top hat, like a plumber's block, so the bottom half is got a rebate for all intents and purposes. Make the block, bore the hole and then cut it down the middle, stick that in the middle with a reduced section there, the clamp plate goes over the top. That might not be a bad way of doing it. That's what I've got to decide. In the meantime, I am inclined to get this surface up on the granite plate and check that it's parallel when it's sat on its base, and then basically just go over the whole thing and make sure that it's not out of plonk. I'd hate to do all this work and then find out that when you rotate this, it's rotating from exaggerated like that, or the other way. That would be a real pain in the ass. And while I've got it stripped down, it's as easy to check it out. So I'm going to degrease it all, sit it on the surface plate and measure round from the surface plate to that level all the way round, and it should be perfectly parallel with that bottom face and that face. If it is, I'll be surprised. I would expect there to be some wear along here, in which case I might actually just give it over a light scraping over to bring those true to that. And then once I've done that, do the mating faces on there, which is going to be a bit of a tight squeeze. But what that enables me to do then is that I've then got two scraped surfaces which are perfectly nice and true. So then when that sits on there, and before I've mounted the new thing, the new boss, I can mount the boss carrier with its, whilst it's solid, shove it up that way, make up a nice snug fitting pointed shaft to go through this end, mark the end of the boss that end, back that way, and mark the same through the hole at this end of the body, and that will then give me the centre holes, centre line for going through there. That's the plan. But bit of work to do yet. So the first job would be to scrape that, also check the rotating base that sits on, but that's a separate entity. So that's me gibbering on. Right, so we'll just run the DTI over it and measuring thou. So the section that runs underneath the jaws, got 2 thou high, 2 thou here, 4 thou here, which I'm not too fussed about, but that's the open section. So if I take that as 0, I've got that bit as 0, that's 0.75 higher for some reason, but there's a bit of trauma around there. And then we've got a wear section there, and then basically it climbs them highest bits there, but roughly there's between 1.5 and 2 thou wear in this section, this being higher. Now I could spend some time basically going over it. What I'm going to do before I do anything else is stick a mic over and just measure the that face. If that corresponds to this being the thinner section, then I might just spend a little bit of time and print this area and get it so it's a flat plane, and that it evens that out a bit, because as a plane of ice, it does deflect when you put the pressure on and clamp it. That whole thing's going to yawn a bit anyway. So I'm not too fussed. It wants to come down a little bit. It's not as bad as I thought it was going to be though. So I'm going to get the mic out and just measure these thicknesses. Bring you back when I got that. Well, that all matches up. The thickness of the web there is 805, 803, and then it goes up quite a bit. So you got 4, 6, 7, 9, and then on that side, it doesn't matter side to side, but you're looking at all the distance, the change along the length. So 7, 7, 4, 2, 3. So you got quite a bit of variation on that web thickness. Some of it's going to be evened out because of the length of the plates, which are 6 inches long. But I'd like it to be, damn sight closer than that. So I'm going to print these two faces. I'm happy that that it's sitting square, and I think all I'm seeing is wear. So I'm going to print these faces and take them down to give me a flat plane parallel with this surface. That's going to be the key, maintaining it being parallel. Otherwise we're going to introduce a fault, and I don't want that. Well, we're not looking for anything clever, so we've basically got to take off around about a thou and then go over the whole lot, and then we'll measure it again. We're not going to glue it still till we've got it in alignment. Oh dear. Turn some crap out of them. Don't feel very sharp. Let's give that blade a tickle up on the grinder. Oh, right, that's better. Feel it bite now. I haven't honed it, and it looks like a proud feel, but we're only roughing it down. Tickly brush. So we're only scraping this end so that it'll pick up a bit of print ink. The question is, what do I do with that last bit, which is currently higher than that bed? Really wants bringing down, doesn't it? That I suspect is going to be the paint. I think that's a casting fault there. Certainly looks like it. Right, I think what I'll do is I'll leave that section. I'm just going to fit one of the old jaws on there, and then when I print it and I go up to that point off the edge of the plate, I won't continue to keep bumping into that. So I'll just get the jaw fitted and bring you back. So put it up on the granite, measured it again. I've evened out that section, albeit it's still, I've got 2 thou higher there, one thou higher there, and 1 thou higher there. So I'm going to go over that section 3 or 4 passes and then do the whole of that section. Excuse the sniffing, it's cold. I know you can't see the dial, but it's got 2 0 points there, and I'm getting it's half a thou up. It climbs a bit at the end here. 1.5 thou up there. Bring it back round to its 0 here. 0. It's half a thou there. 0. Half a thou. That's a thou up there. And that's a thou up there. So that's basically now, in my view, it's all within a thou. I can start printing it now and just take down the high spots. I'm looking at getting half decent coverage, somewhere between 5 and 8 dots per inch, just quite big contact areas. Because when it's clamping, it's all clamping on the underside, isn't it? As it's trying to pull up, it seldom does it pull down. What? Do wish I had a bigger workshop. I'll get a bigger plate. So I just feel like every time I come to use this, and it's 24 by 18 inches, I just feel it'd be a lot easier with a bit more real estate. Even a 4 foot by 3 foot, or a 4 foot by 2 foot. And 4 foot by 2 foot would be ideal. Don't see them very often though. Now I'm expecting it to print this end and at the mouth, and maybe a couple of pickup points in the middle. So there, that's where that 1 thou area was. I'll visit the ends. So scrape them down and just keep working it up now. I'm not going to video it all, I'll bring you back when we're seeing some daylight. Well, I made a bit of progress, still got a bit of a hollow here, which I'm not too fussed about. I'm just going to start hitting the black spots now. Black, they're blue. They would be black if I was using black ink, but these are blue, because it's blue ink. So it's not a million miles off, and I'm not aiming for a massive number of counts, I'm just going to hit the blue spots now. Some of this will come in. Looks like I've leaned on the scraper a bit heavy. Well, that's improved it. I think we'll give it another couple of 2 or 3 cycles and a day will be called, and it will be this day. So that's the final print, or the last print I've done I should say, and I'm pretty much 0-0 over all of it. You know, it's certainly less than 1/4 of a thou, apart from this last little bit around the outside there where I've got a little bit higher, about 1/2 a thou over where it is there. So I'm actually gonna have a butty and a cup of tea, a slice of cake for inspiration. I might hit the blues again, because I don't know whether you can tell, you can see it, you should do. Big plain stripe all the way down there, and the contact areas here. So I've obviously leaned in a bit when I've been doing that edge, which is not unusual. But yeah, 3 hours. Tedious. Excuse the handheld. So that's it done. I'll give it a few more cycles. Got the hole out from there. It's I've not done a spot count because I can tell it's more than 5 or 6 per inch, and it's a vice. Excuse me. So next job's flip it over. Well, next job's clean it off and get the mic on it again and use the micrometer to measure that distance down both sides. And what I'm looking for is something that's, the tighter the tolerance, the tighter the gap I can have the clamp jaws, sorry, the retaining plates, which means there's less chance of it kicking up. Now the plate's 6 inch long, so I'm thinking if I can get it up within half a thou, that should be ideal. Obviously anything more than that is going to be the give in the bolts, flexing the flexure in the clamping plates I gibber on, and flex on the actual vice body. Got to be better than it started though. I'll bring you back when I've cleaned it off and got some mic measurements. Well, I guess it was to be expected. We've got a variation from this point to this point of 5.3 thou and 5.9 thou on the other side. The major part of the difference is in this last 1.5 inches, which is obviously the least worn part. So if you like, I've got 803.4 thou, 803.1, 802, 802, 804. So that's where it starts increasing, and it's similar on that side. 801, 800, 801, 802, 806. So I got to flip it over and take some meat out from that face there, both sides. I want to get it down to so there's no more than half a thou variation. Tedious, but there we go. I thought I'd just whip it up on some parallels and check, see what I can find. I've verified that that face is basically good till about here, and then it's creeping up, but there's also a bit of corrosion there, and the same on the other side. But the numbers match up with the mic, which is encouraging. Measuring then the height from the table. Now the parallels are good to 2/10 thousandths when I've checked them in the past. No reason to suspect they're anything different. I've set it up. I got a 0 there and a 0 there. Okay, so it's set up on the ways. I've then got 1.2 thou higher here than there or there, and half a thou higher there. So if you summarize that, that's 7/10 of a thou on the piss. So it's like that. What I'm not sure about is why. So I'm going to flip it back over, sit it on this face, and then start measuring the height from here to there, and there should be 7/10 difference. So I might have to break out the tenths dial. Why is that important? Well, the idea is that the shaper vise would sit with the tool going through in that direction. So if I've got 7/10 variation, having spent all that time getting it so that my cutting bit is parallel with the work surface, if the vise is then going to either throw it that way or that way, so I want to get it right, or at least down to a couple of tenths. Yeah, hey ho. So we're sat on the base, DTI on the far extreme. Now that's me leaning on this edge. If I lean on the other edge, nothing. So I need to check I've got no shit under there again, but I'm thinking that the bottom is probably slightly warped, given that the clamp screws fit there. So that might explain, once it's clamped down, it's probably flat. Probably. Bearing in mind I've got to now check the perimeter of that in relation to the base. So I'll probably give the base a quick scrape over, print that so I get it flat, and then measure the height from the stone to that mounting surface there and there. Really hope I don't have to do the scrape those in. Right, well, it's tea time and my kids will be getting hungry. So I figured, given the amount of material to shift off that face, both sides, to bring it parallel to the face it's sitting on, might as well do it on the shaper. So I thought, oh, it's easy enough. Flip it over, sit it down, bulge it down, job's a good one. No T-nuts. So I spent the last 2 hours drilling and tapping 2 lengths of this, which, if you recall, we made in an earlier episode when we were making these. So I'm out of time to get it progressed at this stage. But the plan is grind up a tool that I can hold in here, coming out at an angle, and index it across, or feed the work into the tool. I just need to get myself set up so I can make sure I've got clearance here. I should have, because I'm not actually going to go right to the very end. Anyway, that'll be probably tomorrow. It's all a bit subdued in the garden. Why is it subdued, Sky? It's because one of the chickens have died. Oh dear. You don't think it's because you tried to grab the carcass as I double bagged it and headed off for the toilet and the dustbin? What do you think, Sky? No, it's nothing to do with that. Well, we've set the vise up, got new T-nuts in, ground a cutting bit. I'm already part way through the cut, and then remember I'm supposed to be videoing it, so you'll have to excuse it. Well, I don't know what the hell I did then, but I thought I was videoing that. So if you remember, this area of the back end of the vise, underside, was least worn, and there was 5 thou difference between this point and that point. So all I've done is clamped it to the table and took a machine cut all the way along. It's a bit bloody tight. I've got 1/4 of an inch clearance here, about 1/8 of an inch clearance under there, and not an insignificant amount of tool overhang. That's a 3/8 bit. Right, I'll see if I can press all the right buttons on the camera and record the other side for you. So I was just just setting up for the cut and inching it through to make sure I've got clearance on everything. So you can see we're tight here. That's past the end of the cut. We're a bit tight on the end, but we can do that. And then we have to make sure the cutter doesn't hit any of that lot. And a big podger at the stop button on the radio, so that's the end of the cut there. So we're good to go. Just tighten everything up, and then I'll try and get you set up, show you the cut. Well, I think we're about there. We just touched off. That, I hope, is it. I'll just get my dusty brush. Well, it's not as neat a finish as the other side. Slightly different tool geometry because I hand ground them. Nothing wrong with it, I can't feel ridges there. So yeah, bring you down. Focus, there we go. I mean, it's basically saved me time hand scraping it. This one's a lot smoother, but there's not a huge difference. So yeah, about 12 minutes to make the cuts and 3 hours pissing about grinding tools and setting it up so it didn't have any collisions. But it's done. So I just checked the dimensions. They're both within 1 thou. There's more variation on the side which appeared to cut smoother, and when I've cleaned it off and looked at it, it's cut. It's basically smeared here and taken a cut here. So basically, I haven't taken enough material off to get the to get a nice clean cut all the way. So what it's done is it's cut and skipped. The other side where it's taken a nice cut, I've got plus or minus 3/10 of a thou in thickness, which is perfectly alright. And this one's a tad over half a thou of variation. So I'll probably do a little bit of work on both of them just to create, just with a hand scraper. But yeah, time well spent. Saves bloody hand scraping off 5 thou, doesn't it?